So you notice it has a similar formatting. In the upper left hand corner, we have the title, which tells you this is where you document all your product sales. To the right of this, we have 4 buttons. To add a new sale, so whenever you sell to any customer, you make use of this button. Whenever you want to pay, or a customer wants to pay you for a credit purchase, so you're allowed to sell goods to customers on credits, so you make use of this button. Whenever you want to delete a sale or create an invoice to a customer. Above this, we have the navigation pane to go to other sections, and below this, we have the data table where all the product sales you make are going to be listed. Now, to add a new sale is the same thing. You simply click on the Add New, it pops up a form, and then you supply all the values. First, you indicate the sales date. By default, Excel is going to enter today's dates. You can modify the day, the month, or the year. I'm going to leave today's date. To move to the next field, I can either click with my mouse or I can make use of the Tab key on my keyboard. So the Tab key will move you from your current field to the next field. So notice as I'm clicking the Tab key, I'm moving on to the next field. Now the status, this is where you indicate if the customer is buying the good upfront, that's making payments upfront, or buying it on credits. Now the advantage is the template enables you track credit purchases. So whenever any customer is owing you money, in the customer section, you can know the total amount that a customer owes you at any point in time. I'm equally going to make this page the first example. Next, I indicate the customer name. Now the customer section is blank because we have no customers in the customer section. So I think it would be better to add the customer first, then enter the sale. So first I'm going to go to my customer section. Works exactly the same way. And here I simply supply the customer information. So first I enter the customer name. I'm going to use rows random. I make use of the tab key to move to the next field. I enter the address. I'm just going to call. Once I'm done, I make use of my tab key. I enter the customer's phone number, customer's email address, and the template will automatically calculate any outstanding balance. So if there is, it's going to display it here. If not, this field is going to be blank. So you notice it's blank, meaning this customer owes us no money. So that's simply how you add customers. You click on the Add New, it inserts a blank new row. First, you indicate the customer's name. It's going to be John Random. Next, you indicate the address, then the customer's phone number, and the customer's email address. Now these fields are optional, so if peradventure you don't know the address, you can leave it blank. The phone, you can leave it blank. It's just advisable to have a database with all of your customer information. So notice the 2 cells here are blank, meaning these customers are not owing us any money. So now we can go to our sales section, click the Add New button, and now you notice that the 2 customers we just added have been automatically populated. So I'm going to go ahead and enter paid. Here, you can start typing. So if I know the customer's name John, I can type J. It will autofill with the first customer that starts with John. Next, I indicate the product category they want to purchase. So let's assume John wants to buy one of my Samsung Notes. Here, it's going to display the 2 phones I have. Once I select the phone, the template will automatically list the cost price, that's the most recent cost price, and the most recent selling price. It equally tells me that I have 5 units in store. So it will automatically tell you the units you have, the cost price, and the selling price. Notice if I change this to, for instance, HTC 1, and I move away, it will automatically update, telling me I have 14 units. I bought it for 60, the most recent cost price, and this is the most recent selling price. So I can either leave the default selling price. If I want to, increase it for this particular customer, I can change the values. So I have the option to modify the value here. Next, I indicate the quantity. So how many units of this phone is this customer buying? So let's assume he's buying only 1. Notice the template will automatically calculate the total, which is 65,000 times 1. Now, if you're given a discount, so for instance, maybe this is a frequent customer or you're offering a 10% discount, here you simply indicate the discount amount. So notice if I enter 1,000 here, once I move away, it will automatically reduce the total price to 64 instead of 65. So the template will at any point in time calculate the total price using the 3 fields here, the selling price, the quantity, and the discount. I'm going to change this back to 0 because I want it to be the 65,000. Once I click enter, it's going to store that sale. So you notice the first row has been populated with the values that I supplied. And it's paid because I selected paid, not credit. So if we go to the customer section, notice the customer still owes us nothing. So the next example now will be a credit transaction. I'm going to click on the Add New button and repeat exactly the same thing. So this is going to be credits. This is going to be for rows. So you notice I'm simply tabbing with my key using the tab key, and I'm starting to type using the first letter, and the template is auto filling it for me. So you notice it tells me this is the most recent cost price, this is the selling price. I'm going to leave that, and I have 12 units. So this customer is buying only 1, and I'm equally offering no discount. So recall I indicated this is credits, meaning that I'm giving the customer the phone today, but the customer is not paying me today. So once I click on enter, you notice it tells me the sales has been added. And now this is a credit transaction. So if we go to the customer section, we should see that Rose Random owes us 400,000, excuse me. So notice we have a 400,000 outstanding for Rose. So that way in the customer section, you can always know if any customer is owing you and the amount in which they're owing you. So that's pretty much how the sales section works. You click the add new, you supply all the values. Now the next button is used to add payments. So now Rose Random is owing us 400. If she wants to pay, you simply click on the add payments button. It pops up a form. You enter the day she's paying. Next, you indicate the customer name. This will list all customers you have. Now, once you select the customer and you tab, it's going to tell you the total amount that customer owes you, which is 400,000. Notice if I change this to John, it's going to tell me John owes me 0 because John paid for the phone he purchased today. I'm going to change this back to Rose, and let's assume from the 400, she can pay only 50%, so 200,000. Once I click enter, it's going to store that payment. So you notice we have a third row now with the customer name. This is a customer payment, and this is what is paid. So this means Rose Random should be owing us only 200,000 because she has paid half of it. So going to the customer section, you notice it automatically updates that to 200,000. So that's how all the sections are connected. So we've covered all the functionalities here, or most of the functionalities, to add a sale, to add payments whenever a customer pays for a credit transaction. To delete an expense works the same way. Simply click on a cell, click on delete. It's going to ask, are you sure you want to delete this sale to Rose on the 29th? If you click yes, it's going to delete. No, it's not. To create an invoice, it works the same way. Simply click on the customer's name. So let's assume I want to create an invoice for this transaction that John Random made. So I click on the customer name. Notice it's highlighted. Then I simply click on create invoice. So it will automatically create an invoice for the selected transaction. So here is the invoice that comes with the template. Now at the top, your company name is going to be replaced here. So once an order is placed, we're going to replace this with your company name. If you have a company logo also, we're going to affix it here. Below this, we have the default address. Now this can be changed using the change address button. So once you click on this button, you notice it pops up a window here where you can modify the street address, the phone, the email, or the website. Now the values you supply here will automatically populate the invoice. So for instance, notice the street address says number 123. If I change this to random address, you notice it will automatically update with random address. In the same way, if I update the phone number to something random, you notice it automatically updates it there. So the values you supply on this portion of the screen will automatically update the invoice. Now, if peradventure you don't have a website and you don't want a website to be listed there, you can simply click on the default value. So notice once I delete that, it removes website from the invoice. In the same way, if I delete email, it removes email from the invoice. Now I'm just going to undo, returning it back to the default values. Now, once you're done modifying the content, you simply click on this button again to hide it. So notice as I click, it's going to hide that portion of the page. So this button pretty much toggles it on and off. When you click it the first time, it displays the fields. You can now modify any portion. Once you're done modifying it, you simply click on it again to hide that portion of the page. So that's the upper section. The template will automatically enter the invoice date. Next, it's going to extract the customer's name, the phone, email, and address if you supply this value to the customer section. So recall that in the customer section, we already added those values. So these are the values there. So if you populate these values, the template will automatically search this section for the customer. If it finds a match, it's going to extract the values here, and then it's going to transfer it to the invoice. So that's the upper section where we have the customer's contact, and below is going to list all the products purchased by the customer. At the bottom, we have the subtotal, the invoice total. You equally have a field to supply any additional comments. For instance, you can write, please pay to account below. If peradventure the customer hasn't made payments, you can just pretty much add any comments here. And here you can add your bank account details. Now this is optional. You can leave this blank if you don't use it. But if you do, you can go ahead and enter the bank name. You can enter your account name, which can just be company LLC, and then you enter your account number. So this is optional. If you would like them to pay to a particular bank account, you can enter the details there and add any comments here. So that's pretty much the invoice functionality. The template will automatically create an invoice for the selected transaction, and you have the ability to create a PDF version of the invoice. Now, the PDF version can be emailed to the client or it can be printed out. So to do that, you simply click on Export to PDF. That's the first button here. Once you do, it's going to pop up two screens. The first screen is going to ask you, where do you want to save this file on your computer? Now, it's advisable for you to have a folder on your computer somewhere where you store all of your invoices. So in your document, you can create a folder for all invoices. So here you simply select that folder. So I'm going to use my desktop, but please do not use your desktop. It's not advisable to save invoices on your desktop. Pretty much create a folder, call the folder invoices, and store all your invoices there. So once you're done selecting the folder, you click OK. Next, it's going to ask you, what name do you want to save this file as? Now, usually most companies have a naming convention, so I could just use the customer's name and then the dates. So this can be your naming convention. Some people precede it with an invoice, depending on your naming convention. This is just the name of the file. So just enter any name you want to name the file as, then click on save. So the template will automatically create a PDF with the name you saved and with the location you specified. So it's going to equally open it up so you can see a sample of how it looks. And it's going to open it up with your default PDF opener. So mine is Adobe Acrobat. If you don't have, it can open it up with Chrome. So here is the invoice. So you notice this is the name I saved it as, Invoice John Random, and the dates. Any name you specify will be saved here, and this is the invoice. Now, the advantage of a PDF version is that this is not modifiable, so the customer cannot change any portion of this invoice. So this can then be added, used as an attachment, sent in an email, or printed out and filed or given to the customer. Okay, so that's the invoice functionality. So recall what we did. We simply clicked on the customer. There's the customer. So for instance, if I click on Rose Random and I click on Create Invoice, it's going to automatically create an invoice for the Rose Random transaction. Now the template will identify that it's only one product that was bought. This is the unit price, this is the total price, this is Rose Random's contact information. Then at the bottom we have the subtotal and the invoice total. So that's how the invoice functionality works. It will automatically extract the contact data from the customer section. So that's how you add sales. You add payments to customers, or from customers, for credit transactions. You delete expenses and you create an invoice. So we've covered the sales section of the template, and we've equally covered the customer section. So simply clicking goes there. Recall when we added to customers, we clicked on add new. It inserts a blank new row. You enter the customer's name, address, phone, email, and the template will automatically calculate the outstanding balance. To delete a customer, you simply click on the first cell, click on delete, click on yes, and it's going to delete that row. So that's a summary of the first sections. Next, we move to the reports section of the template. Now to do that, you simply click on reports and it opens that section of the template. So here's the reports dashboard, and we have a total of 9 reports and 1 database. Now the database is where you supply suppliers information. So pretty much you add new suppliers here. Recall earlier on when we were in the expense section, I did mention that we had 2 types of expenses, or the template supports 2 types of expenses. Either paid expenses, that means you're giving the cash up front, or credit expenses, that is you're taking the product or service to pay at a later date. Now if you indicate credit, you need to link that with a supplier, so the template can know the supplier that you're owing money. But right now you notice our supplier section is blank because we haven't added any supplier to our supplier database. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel this form, go back to my reports dashboard, and go to my supplier section. So here I'm going to add some suppliers. Now this section works exactly the same as the customer section. You simply indicate the supplier's name, the address if you have it, phone number, and email address. The template will then automatically calculate the total amount, if any, that you owe the specified supplier. I'm going to go ahead and enter the supplier's name. Now try to be descriptive in your name. So avoid entering names like supplier 1, 2, 3. No, be a bit descriptive. So let a portion of the name tell you what the supplier does. So this way I know this person's name is Mike and it supplies me with Dell, computers or Dell accessories. So once I've entered the supplier's name, next I indicate the address. Now I'm going to leave this blank, move to the next field where I enter the phone number and the email address. So now I've successfully added the first supplier. So the template will automatically calculate the total amount that I owe the supplier. So notice it's blank because I don't owe Mike anything. Now to add another supplier, simply repeat the process, click on add new, It inserts a blank new row. This time around, this is going to be, let's assume the name of the company is Windsor and they offer office spaces. So let's assume these are the people that I rent my office space from. If I have their address, I go ahead and put it there. I enter their phone number and their email address. Okay, so I'm going to add only 2 suppliers for this demonstration. And you notice that the amount owed is blank for the 2 suppliers. So going back to the expense section, click on add purchase. You notice now the drop-down list lists the 2 suppliers I have. So if you have 50 suppliers listed, they're all going to be here. And as I said, once you start typing, the template will auto fill with the first supplier that starts with that letter. This saves you from having to scroll once you have multiple suppliers. So I'm going to go ahead and add a credit transaction. So I'm going to enter today. This is going to be credit. Let's assume this is my rent. So I have an agreement with my landlord to pay only 50%, or with the company that has the office spaces to pay only 50% now and pay the balance later. So here, this is going to be my office rent for April 2018. So here you just give additional details pertaining to the expense type. Let's assume I pay $50,000 every month. And now if I leave this blank and go ahead and click on enter, you notice the template will refuse to accept the information and tell me that all credit expenses should have a supplier. So functionalities have been added to force you to link any credit transaction with a particular supplier. So that's why it's advisable to populate your supplier section before entering credit transactions. So now I can select the winter spaces, click on enter, and the template now knows that I owe winter office spaces $50,000 for my April 2018 rent. So notice the data is listed. So going back to my supplier section, we should see that now we owe them 50,000 naira. So that's how all the sections are interconnected. In the same way, let's assume now I want to pay only 50%. So I simply go to the expense section by clicking on the expense button on the label. I click on add payments. I enter the day I'm making the payment. Here, I can start typing W, it will auto fill. Once I move away to tell me I owe them 50,000. So here I'm going to enter 25, which is 50%, click on enter, and it's going to store that payment. So now we've added that we've paid 50% from that. So if we go back to the supplier section, we should owe them now only 25,000. Okay, so this will automatically tell you the total amount you owe. So that's how the credit functionality works. And you can do this for your overhead costs, so for any of the items listed here, and also for products. So if, for instance, I want to buy additional laptops on credit, so I simply click on product restock, and here I select credit. It works exactly the same way. I select what I want to buy on credit, which is laptops. Next, I select the model of the laptop, which is my Dell Inspiron. The amounts, they're selling it to me. Let's assume that's going to be 400. And the units I'm buying, let's assume 12. The selling price, I'm going to make that 420. And next I indicate the supplier. In the same way, if I click enter, it's going to tell me all credits should have a supplier. Once I indicate Mike Dell supplier, click on enter. It's going to link the 4.8 million with Mike. So now I'm owing Mike Dell supplier 400 or 4.8 million. So going back to my reports, suppliers, you notice we're owing him 4.8 million. In the same way, if I want to pay part of that, so let's assume I have a whole 4 million to pay, I simply select Mike, put in the amount, click on enter, and now I should be owing him only 800,000 because I've cleared 4 million from that amount. So going back there, you notice it is reduced to 800,000. So from this section, you can always know the total amount you owe each supplier. Just like in the customer section, you can know the total amount each supplier owes you. So that's the first database. The rest are reports. So the next report is the sales summary report. And as its name says, it just enables you to see your sales on a monthly basis. So once you click on the report, it will automatically refresh it. So it might take a while to load because the template is refreshing it, pulling data from the sales section. So this section works with your sales section. Later on when you start using the template, you're going to have multiple sales, maybe, 50 per month, 100, quarterly, depending on the frequency of your transactions. But you're going to have many transactions here. So you might want to know what's the total amount or the total number of products I sold in a particular month. So that's when you use this report. So from this report, you can be able to say, I want to see only sales that I made in the month of April 2018. So here I simply select the year, 2018. At the bottom here, I simply select the months, April, and I'm showing only April because all of our transactions are in April. But later on, when we add additional months, it's going to be listed there. So these are all the transactions. I can see only laptop sales. It's going to show me only the laptops I've sold. Phone sales, only the phones that I've sold. And if I want to see the two laptops and phones, I simply click on the funnel here. So laptops will show me only laptop sales in April 2018. Phones will show me only phone sales in April 2018, which is 1. Here's the total I made. Now if I want to see all laptops and phones, I click on this funnel. Notice it says clear filter, and it's going to show me all laptops and all phones that I sold. In the same way, if I want to see all I bought on credits, I simply click on credits. It's going to show me the credit transaction. If I want to see paid, it's going to show me all the paid transaction. So from paid, I know this is the cash that left me because this is paid. Credit, I haven't yet paid for. Okay, so that way you choose either. More often than not, it's not going to be both because this will not make practical sense. You select either if you want to see credit transactions or paid transactions. So that's how this report works. It just enables you filter the data from the sales section. You can filter it by year, by month, by category, by status, and also by customers. If I want to see only transactions to rows, I simply click on this drop-down list here. And then what do? I select rows, I click on OK, and it's going to show me only rows. Okay, so I can use the filter here, select all, it's going to show me all. Okay, so I can filter by either the dates, the category, the status, or the customer. Now the next report is the expense report. This works exactly the same way as the sales report. The only difference is that it works with your expenses section. So once you click, it's going to refresh, and it just shows you the total sales you've made for a particular year or month. So it works exactly the same way. At the top, you can indicate the year you want to see, so 2017 or 18. If you click OK, it's going to show you only for that year. So notice it shows you only 2018. If I change this to 2017, it's going to show me only transactions in the year 2017, which is only this, and the total at the bottom. I can see for a particular month. Later on, this is going to list all the calendar months, but right now, only the months that have data. There we go. I'm going to just change that back to all so I can see everything together. I'm going to change this also to all. So all is going to combine all the years and all the months together. So you notice we have December, we have April across multiple years. If I want to see all credits, I simply click on credits. If I want to see all paid, I simply say all paid. Okay, so these are vendors that I bought items on credit. These are vendors that I paid. In the same way, I can see by category. So the total amount I spent on advertising, it's going to show me. Total I spent on product restock, on rent, and so on. And I can also see by supplier. Okay, so that's how this report works. The next report is your inventory report. This will just tell you your inventory value. So at the top, it's going to tell you the worth of all the goods you currently have using your current cost price. So notice it tells you this is the total inventory value. That's all the products you have in your store. This is the value. And these are the respective products, the units, the most recent cost price, and then the value. At the top here also you can filter. So if I want to see all laptops, I simply click on laptop. This is the value of all the laptops I have. Phones, this is the value of all the phones I have. If I want to see both, I click on this funnel. It filters it, and this is the value of all the items I have using the cost price. Next, we have the P&L statements. Now, before I do that, first of all, I'm going to cover the reports at the bottom. This is the last report I'm going to cover. The get customer information is very straightforward. At the top, you simply select the customer, so it'll automatically list the customer's phone number, email, and home address. So notice Rose _ Yahoo. If I change this to John, it's going to refresh and show me John's contact information, which is in Lagos, and it's John. At the bottom here, I can select the particular month, and I can enter a year, and it will show me all the sales that I've made to John in the month of April 2018. It's going to list all the sales that I made to John Random in the month of April 2018. So this is the only transaction. The same way, if I change this to Rose, it's going to list all the sales that I made to Rose in the month of April 2018. So it's going to list all credit and paid sales. So there we go. So this is all the transactions related to Rose. This laptop, and this is what the customer paid. So it's going to list everything. So you have a summary per customer for a particular dates period. Now the next report is the creditor list. Now this is very straightforward. You're just going to list all the suppliers you owe money, because it's possible in the supplier section you might have 20 suppliers, and maybe out of the 20 only one, you owe only one money. So rather than seeing all the data here, you can quickly click on this report, and it's going to show you only suppliers that you owe money. So at the top, it's going to tell you the total number of suppliers you owe, which in this case should be 2, and it's going to list the suppliers with the respective amounts that you owe them. So at any point in time, you know the total amount you're owing all of your suppliers. The same way, your debtor list, you can see all customers that owe you money. So it's going to show only customers that owe you money. At the top, it's going to tell you the total number of customers that owe you, which is 1, and it's going to list the customer's name and the amounts that they owe you. Now, the next report is key metric reports. This report works exactly the same as from the basic template. On the left-hand side, you can see the total number of products you've sold the current month. So we're in April. This is for April. Next month, this will automatically update to May. So it will always show you the total amount you've sold the current month versus the last month. So you can do month-to-month comparison to equally tell you the value. So right now we've not sold anything last month, so it's 0. So I'm quickly going to add a sale for last month. So last month is March. I'm just going to change this to March just for demonstration purposes. It's going to be paid. This can be Rose Random. This can be a phone sale. So I'm just going to select one of the phones we have, maybe the Notes. There we go. And let's assume I'm selling, 4 units. So it tells me the total. I click on enter. So I've added the sale for March. So now we have transactions for April and also for March. So you notice if I go to my sales report, so it takes a while to load, we should now see the transaction we just added. So you'll notice that if I change this to March, okay, this is the transaction I just added, which is the Notes for Rose in March. If I click on all, it's going to show me both April and March. So this is April transaction, March, this is April transaction. In the same way, if I go to the metrics, now we can see that last month I sold 4 products. However, this month I've sold only 2. So there's a 50% decline. I've sold half of what I sold last month. In revenue, the same thing. I've sold almost 53% decline because I made 1.4. Now I've made only 665,000. Okay, so this way you can always do month-to-month comparison to see if you're performing better than last month. And this is dynamic. So right now, this is showing April and March. Next month, this is going to show April on this side and then May on this side. Okay, so this will always be the current month. This will always be the preceding month. On the right is always going to tell your top selling category, which is phones, because we've sold the most number of phones. Your top buying customer, which is Rose. She has made 3 purchases. And your top revenue month. That's the month in which you've made the most money. So which is March, and this is the amount you've made. And this is all dynamic. So at any point in time, you know the category. Are you selling more phones or laptops? Who's the customer that buys the most from you? And which month in the year do you make the most money? And at the bottom, we have a chart whereby you can see a graphical representation of your income. So for the current year, so for 2018, January to December. So we know in March, this is what we made. In April, there was a decline. We've made only almost like 50% of what we made in March. So this way you can see the graphical representation, okay? And then the next report is the inventory alerts. Now this just enables you see products with a specific number of units. So if I type in 20 here, what I'm telling the template is I want to see all the products I have 20 units or less. So once I click refresh, so now you see that we have only, I think, 2 products that have less than 20 units. So 20 units or less, and these are the 2 products. In the same, if I want to see products that have 5 units or less, I simply type 5, click refresh, and it's going to show only products from my product section that have less than 5 units. Okay, so this is useful if you have a reorder level. So you can always come in here every day, type in 5 if 5 is your reorder level, and it's going to list all the products that have 5 units or less. Now the last report is the P&L statement. Now, the P&L statement, that's the profit and loss report, is a financial report that pretty much tells you your business performance. So on a monthly basis, it's going to tell you the total income you generated, the cost of the income, and the total expenses. So pretty much you can evaluate your monthly business performance. Now, this is how it looks. At the top, we have the title, profit and loss statements. Below it, we have a time frame that tells you the period it's generating the report for. So you notice it says from the 1st of January 2018 to December 2018. In the same way, we have a column for each month. So this is for January, for February, for March up until December, and it's all for the year 2018. Now to change the year, you simply scroll to the right. In the upper right-hand corner, you simply enter the year. So the value you enter here determines the year in which the data is generated for. So notice if I change this to 2020, it will automatically update everything to the year 2020. So that's how dynamic the template is. You can generate a profit and loss statement for any year. So I'm going to change this back to 2018. Because that's the only year in which we have data for. And once you enter the year, the next step is to click on the refresh button. Now, once you do, the template will automatically extract the data from other sections and populate the report. Now, this profit and loss statement, or the profit and loss statement, is made up of 3 categories. The first section is your income section. So this will tell you the total revenue you generate on a monthly basis. So this cell will tell you for January, for February, for March, up until December. Now, the only source of revenue is selling products, so pretty much this will tell you the total amount you made from selling products on a monthly basis. The next section is the cost of goods sold, and this pretty much will tell you the cost of the products you sold. So if in January you sold X products, this will tell you the total cost of the X products you sold. And lastly, we have the gross profit, which is the difference between the two, and this will basically tell you the true profits, so the actual profit you make on each item. And the last category is the expense category. So this is your overhead cost, things like advertising, office expense, rent, and so on. Now recall that these categories look familiar. So advertising up until other. Remember that in the expense section, when we clicked on the drop-down list, those are the same categories that we saw. So recall I said earlier on that you can modify the values here. So to modify these values, you simply make use of the profit and loss statement. So you notice the first option is advertising and marketing. If I want to change this, let's assume my company or my business doesn't really do much advertising. So I want to use another category that better suits my business. So I can simply go to my profit and loss statements, click on this field and change it. So I can delete the values here. And let's say I want to know the total amount I spend on internet subscription every month. So I can replace that with internet subscription. And now if I go back to my expense section, you'll notice that the drop-down list has been automatically populated to internet subscription. So you can modify the values here to better suit your business using the P&L statement. I'm just going to go back to the P&L statement and undo that. So in the template you're going to receive by default, these are the options you're going to see. So advertising, office, rent, and so on. But you can always modify it to better suit your business. So what it does is it tells you the total amount you spend in each category on a monthly basis. So that way you can see if you spend more, for instance, on phone credits in January than February, and so on. So this can help you limit your spending. So if you're spending too much, you can be able to know that, okay, I need to curtail this. And you can also be able to know the average amount you spend on a particular category. So later on, when you populate this template, you can be able to see the total amount you spent, for instance, on utilities like your PHCN units. So you can be able to know on an average basis from January to April, this is what I spend. So on average, this is what I spend every month. So it just helps you better understand your business performance. So now I've clicked the refresh button. So you notice we have some data and we're just going to verify if this is correct. So it tells us that in the month of March 2018, we generated income of 1.4 million. So we can confirm that by going back to our sales section. You notice that in the month of March, we have only one transaction, and indeed, it was 1.4. So we sold 4 units of our Samsung phone at a cost of $350 each. So if you multiply it, you know that the total revenue we generated, that's the total amount that this customer paid to our account, is 1.4. However, from this 1.4, part of it is the cost price. So the price I actually purchased these phones, recall that in the expense section, I had to buy the phones to be able to sell it. So in the same way, I bought the phones for 300,000. So 300,000 times 4 is 1.4, and that's why it tells us that the cost price is 1.2, excuse me. 300,000 times 4 is 1.2. So the actual gross profit is the difference between the two, which is 200,000. So that's how the template was able to get 200,000 as our gross profit for the month of April. Now that month, it says we have no expenses. That's no overhead expenses. So just to show how dynamic the template is, I'm quickly going to add salaries for that month. So I'm going to quickly go back to my expense section. So very quickly, I'm going to change this to March just for demonstration purposes. This is going to be salaries. This is going to be March employee salary. Now, the template supports entering a lump sum as a salary. So you can have a payroll template or that automatically calculates your payee, allowances, and all of that. Then you simply key in the figures here. So let's assume from that template, I did the math, and the total amount I'm spending on my payee is, $306,500 for the month of March. That's the total payroll, total amount I'm paying all of my employees. Now this is just a fit-to-just figure, just for demonstration purposes. So now once you enter that data, so it's listed there as the total amount. So that's a March expense, salaries. So now if we go back to our P&L statements, you notice that it should say that we now have in the month of March salaries of a bit over 300,000. So there we go, 306. So it's automatically identify that. Now subtracting the two, it tells us that we made a loss in that month because we spent more than what came in. And this is, we made a loss of a bit over 100,000. So it's a red when it's a loss, it's a black when it's a profit. So that way you can know the months at a glance that you make a profit and you make a loss. So that's for the month of March. Let's quickly go through April. So April, it tells us we generated 465. So we can confirm that by going to our sales. There were 2 transactions in April. So if we sum the 2 together, 65 plus 400, it gives us 645. So that's correct. And the cost price is equally the sum of the 2, which is 420. So the cost of the Dell Inspiron, so if we go to our expense section, you notice that a Dell Inspiron cost us 380. And next is the cost of the second item we sold, which is our HTC One 8. And our HTC One 8 had a cost price of 60. So if we sum the 2 together, that's 440. So let's confirm that. You notice that it is indeed 440. So that means the gross profit is the difference between the 2, which is 25,000. And we equally spent an additional 50 on rent. That means we made a loss of negative 25. So these are random figures, and that's why we're making a loss. But later, when you put actual figures, it's going to make more business sense. So that's a summary of the profit and loss statements, and I think I've covered all the sections of the template. Now, this is the generic standard inventory template. If you would like other functionalities added to better suit your business, let us know. We can modify that to your need.